So I've come up with the top 8 QC issues for figures that I know for the modern era. I know that there are others, and some are, kind of hit and miss, meaning it's hard to say if it's widespread or not. But these are widespread, well-known, documented QC issues from the modern era. And most of it started with C.H.U.G. Not so much during the Unicron trilogy. Most of the time with that, if you ever got a bad figure, you just got the whole figure was just bad. Like the plastic was rough, parts wouldn't fit. And usually you'll take it back to the store to give you one, and it's built correctly. But these are just built purposely bad with stuff that's wrong. And we're going to start with number 8, Kingdom Megatron. Now this one was fixable multiple ways. There was Larkin's layers, pinhole covers, problem solved. And the thing that you could flip the arms around and they pretty much are universal. You kind of can get away with it. And they didn't fix it until they got to the Legends Galvatron, where they fixed it and got rid of the battle damage. And I think they kind of just slightly tweaked a few paint apps here and there. But it was egregious because of the fact that it was Galvatron. And those pinhole covers, if you did the arms correctly, they just stuck out like a sore thumb. I mean, it is what it is, But when are we going to go on next? Back to the Universe Prowl. So both Universe Prowl and Universe Blue Streak suffered from this egregious, just awful paint. And it occurred mainly on the side where the doors were and the sides of the chest. And if you touch that paint and you got maybe a little bit of sweat in your hand, immediately that paint would go away. And the little highway patrol sign would scrape, and literally you'd be stuck with clear plastic or just a very sticky, just nasty feeling. And it was worse with Blue Streak because, he had all that silver. And I'm telling you, man, I mean, yes, the import versions would probably be your best bet because the paints on them were better. But, that was bad because literally you would have to look at a Blue Streak and go, is this paint going to come off? And yes, it came off. And I mean, it was bad. I don't know what happened there. And, because this mold did not get a whole lot of use, it really didn't come back out again. Next is this piece of crap, which was the, Cybertron Starscream, which everybody tried to say was using the C.H.U.G mold. There's no parts of the C.H.U.G mold in this damn toy. Please stop trying to fool yourself into making this shit better than what it was. No, there's nothing from C.H.U.G in here. Go look at my video. You'll see that. The left arm or right arm just keeps coming. You can't fix it. Literally, it does. There's too many YouTubers that report on it. Bad QC. It's the worst. It just pisses me off. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Next is Grapple. And if you had Grapple, if you didn't hear the reports, the 5mm posts were too large or too big, and thus when you tried to put the the arms back in to transform it, they would get kind of caught in there, and then a lot of times people would break it. And of course, now you got broken 5mm ports. So before you would transform them, you would really have to shave down the ports and just shave it down as much, not too low, but just shave it down enough so where it doesn't get stuck, because if it did, you could break those posts. Now with Inferno and Artfire, and I think the Velocitron one, there hasn't been that issue. So at least Hasbro actually went out and fixed that issue. With as great a figure as Grapple was, Inferno and the mold in general is almost masterpiece quality. I would hate to see breakage on that. Next was Super Megatron, which kind of pissed me off because it kind of pushed me away from buying this figure, hearing that the misassembly issues, especially if you get him, he would come with 2 left tank treads or something like that, and some of the tolerances were bad, and just other things like if you weren't careful with him, he would pretty much be an unusable figure. And I still want one of these, so I'm kind of on the fence because I know I got to pay the late tax. But man, I don't want to get one. He's got 2 left pieces or something like that, especially with this figure, because I know a lot. Yes, I know a lot about the Battle Stars years ago. That when I heard about this, I killed myself. I'd say kill myself, but I literally almost wanted to just punch myself in the face and not picking him up. But I just didn't want to go through that QC issue with him. So just be careful if you still buy one in the aftermarket. Now, next is the Seeker mold from from the early days of C.H.U.G. And I used to get a lot of people used to tell me I was wrong about G1 Universe Starscream. But yes, this was even built differently than his counterpart when he first came out in C.H.U.G. And what sucks about this toy was a lot of people didn't want to admit that he was built differently because, of course, look at the paint job, look at the figure. He's basically was at this time a modern version of the G1 Starscream. But first things first, the shoulders wouldn't latch in place. The 5mm posts were too big. A lot of plastic is a little bit larger than the actual C.H.U.G Seeker. And thus, when this was built, it was super loose. All the joints were loose. The 5mm posts where you peg in the arm blasters wouldn't fit. And of course, they're already too large. And thus make him a very, very terrible toy. Yeah, he looked great in the package, but as soon as you open him, you knew something was off. And if you go back and compare him to the classics Starscream, you'll see the differences. And it was mainly every part of this. Now, me being the one to take apart my C.H.U.G Seekers will tell you, yes, this mold was also used to make Henkei Skywarp and Henkei Thundercracker. And yes, they suffered from the same tolerances and issues that that same mold suffered from. And thus a lot of people would be afraid to buy the originals because they thought they had a KO. And it did not get fixed. Now on to Ironhide. This is another one. I mean, I don't know what happened with this. It was probably the Buttafuoco, literally, because the back of the car is the chest of the Ironhide mold. And what happened with him was basically not even misassembly. The plastic on the inner of the body is too much plastic, and thus it doesn't. It's not wide enough to have the head sit correctly. So you always had this looking down look, and you would think they would say, okay, we have an issue here. Let's go ahead and fix it. But even in Japan, when you got to the Henkei versions and the Ratchet, none of them all had the same issue with the head looking down. You had to take this thing apart and sand that. It's like you had to sand down. I forgot which part it was to get him to actually transform correctly. And very few people wanted to go through this because there was so many panels and everything like that. But literally, look, this is the Henkei version. He still has the same. And I think with the United version, when they got to the United 3-packs, it was the same thing as well. And the same thing happened to Ratchet. Ratchet had the same issue. Like, they didn't go back and look at it and say, okay, let's fix the issue. No, they did not. And this is the thing with Hasbro and Takara. It seems like a certain mold, when it gets an issue, they're just like, nope, we don't care anymore. But even worse than that was Thrilling 30 Blitzwing. Let's talk about this one because this mold got released for quite a few years and quite a few remolds, and never got a single fix. So the top of the shoulders would not latch in place because the peg that twist where the canopy is, there's this like long cylinder piece of plastic that's too much plastic. And what you would have to do is get sandpaper and sand it down. Not too much, not too little. If you did it right, then when you put them back together, everything would clamp in place and the shoulder lock mechanism would work. Now you would think they would fix that with Takara. No, they didn't fix it with the Takara version. And yes, that's been reported as well. But what makes it worse is they also did a slight remold and change of the figure into Double Dealer, where I think the head got remolded, and but he still had the same weapons, and he still had the same issue. Like, you cannot get, they did not try to fix it. And the same thing happened with Cloud Starscream. They looked at that and went, as this is supposed to be like a premium figure. This was probably the most expensive version of the Thrilling 30 Blitzwing mold. And they said, we ain't even trying to fix it. You literally have the Masterpiece No Rays on this figure, and they were like, we don't care. It still does not lock in place. Now, they said this one actually kind of gets as close to locking in place, but it's the same issue that the mold has. they never fixed that piece. And I remember the poor guy that actually recorded his time trying to talk to Hasbro way back when in 2014, and it was like he was just going in circles on a phone call. He just gave up. Now the video might still be, I think he did get a resolution. I gotta go back and find it, but I'm not sure. But man, it was a daunting experience trying to talk to Hasbro about a figure that they knew had an issue, and they did their best not to try to fix it. So there's probably a million QC issues we know about the the yelling plastic. A lot of figures that come with them out the gate. But if you know of any ones that are egregious that have not get fixed, let us know. We'll talk about it maybe in another video. Super Robot Ed, more news, reviews to them. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.